What if I told you that you could turn a shovel into a story? I'm not talking about the one from Shovel Knight, just a small orange-handled shovel from a hardware store. Kind of strange, right? Well, that's what I thought when I was asked to do this. I was at the Young Writers Conference held by Right on Door County. Around 10 other people and I were listening to an author named Sarah Hammond. She presented us with multiple different pictures, each of a different everyday item. Then she told us to quickly come up with a story for each of them. Now, a lot of fun and really interesting stories were created that day, but the ones that stuck out to me were the ideas created around the picture of a shovel, like the one I described above. Everybody had a different story, each with their own place for the shovel. But one thing that was honestly more interesting than the creativity of the class was the fact that they all had the same theme behind them. Let's see if you can guess what that is. I suggested that the main character dug up a magical item that gave them a superpower. One person said that they dug up a locked box in their garden. Another, along those same lines, said that someone dug up a letter belonging to the mysterious deceased owner of their house. Finally, a person came up with the idea that the main character was burying a dead body. Now, on that darker note, let's see if you guess what the common theme was. I'll give you a moment to think it through. Here's what I discovered. Every story had the same two things guiding them, two connotations: hiding and finding. Did you see it? Over 10 different people created over 10 different stories based on one common object, and every single one had the same two themes behind them. For me, this raised a lot of questions. One specific question stuck in my head. How did that happen? How does an object have a specific connotation? Well, connotation, in its simplest form, is the object's significance. So for a shovel, the significant part about it is the fact that it can hide things and cover things. That's really interesting. We go about our day subconsciously cataloging the objects around us. We find what's significant about it. From that point forward, we remember that, and whenever we need it, we pull it out of the file cabinets of our brain. We remember our encounter with that object. We remember the stories. In the most basic sense, we look at the world through experience. Which brings us to the root of what makes a story itself. It's object association. We take in what we see around us and we turn it into something magical. If you need an example of the worth and power of humanity, all you need to do is look at our stories. You have the power to create an entire world inside of your head. But how do you do something like that? How can you do something so awe-inspiring and frankly amazing? Well, the answer isn't that difficult. Stop and smell the roses. Take a moment to look at the space around you. Now, in our fast-paced world, I can guess that very few people do that on a regular basis. It's really hard. Everybody wants to move forward. We just assume that right now is the worst place to be. And for some people, that's true. But that doesn't mean that you can't find a story around you. Look at your environment. Every item had a past. How did that picture frame get to your wall? Where were those flowers from? How many people have sat down at that table and shared a meal together? Everything came from somewhere. All you have to do is look. Use that file cabinet of knowledge that we gathered and start to answer some questions. As you fill in the gaps, you create a new story. It's like a puzzle. There might be some gaps now, and you might have accidentally vacuumed up that one missing piece, but you've still created a beautiful picture. But what good comes out of creating stories? Well, right now, I'm actually writing a webcomic called The Enduring. I've had this idea since 3rd grade, so I am really attached to the characters. Every time I sit down to plan or write or draw, I put myself in their shoes, even for the villains. I write them at their lowest points and I cry with them. I draw them defeating what's stopping them from being their full selves, and I love them deeply. I'm connected to them. I become them as I write. This is one of the many benefits of storytelling. You are empathetic with your world. You're grounded, and we all need that. Think of a world where everybody knows the story of everything around them. Would we be tearing down forests? Would we be throwing our trash into the ocean? I don't think so. Even the tiniest pebble would have the most significance. Okay, so I've talked about a concept for a while. And concepts are great, don't get me wrong, but if you're like me, it's easier to grasp onto an example. In my hand, I have a sketchbook. On the surface, you can see a couple of things. The cover is made of cardboard, the pages are pretty worn, and some of them are falling out. I've drawn this from 3rd grade to 6th grade, so you can definitely see how the art has improved. Cool. But how do you make a story out of that? It's time for what I like to call educated speculation. This is where we start actually writing our story, and we basically just make stuff up on the spot. Let's start with the pine cone. That pine cone fell from the top of an ancient pine tree all the way down into the brush. As the Great Depression rocks America, this pine cone grows into a little sapling. Every year it grows taller and taller until one day, over a century later, that tree is 50 feet tall. Then that pine tree was cut down by a logging company and shipped off to a factory. There, factory workers and machines worked together to grind it into a pulp and chemically treat it. It was then shaped into a piece of cardboard and some paper. It's sent off to yet another factory, ready to be turned into a sketchbook. The sketchbook is then sent off to a grocery store. A little kid begs their mom to buy it, hoping that maybe if they got that book, they could draw something as good as the drawing on the front. After buying it, the kid goes home and draws. And draws some more. Fast forward 4 years, and the little kid is now in 7th grade. They're on stage talking about how one sketchbook has traveled across the world and into the hands of one kid. After that story, that's not a sketchbook anymore. It's an ancient pine tree. It's someone's job. And it's the beginning of a hobby and a passion. And it's a story. So to end us off today, I have one task for you. It's pretty simple. Just get out there, look around, and tell a story.